Effie walked into the room after an exhausting day at work. She did not have time to catch lunch as she had a lot of work to do, and she did not notice that so much time had passed. Effie's husband called upon her to come take care of the kids, asking her why she came home so late. If she had forgotten today was his day with the boys. He was also upset that he wouldn't eat as nothing had been prepared. She apologized for coming late and asked why he did not warm the food she kept in the kitchen for them to eat when they were hungry. He laughed hysterically and said, "Me in the kitchen? When did that start?" She said, "You know I go out and work so we can both take care of the home. The least you could do is warm the food for the kids to eat." Femi did not want to exchange words with his wife and told her she wasn't the only woman working. She should learn to manage the home and work so they don't interfere with each other. Then he left to go hang out with his buddies. Kefi was so weak and tired. She quickly put down her bag, washed her hands, and hurried to make dinner for the kids. After feeding them, she prepared a bath and got them ready for bed. When they went to bed, she took a shower and had a bath. Then she had to thoroughly clean the house, wash the plates, and do the laundry. By the time she was done, she was so exhausted and wanted to rest. Her husband came home very drunk and messed up the floor she had just cleaned, demanding for food. She then went and made food for him, amidst tears, wondering how long she could cope with this. By the time she brought the meal, he had passed out, and she stared at the mess and the wasted energy she put into making the meal. She packed it up and cleaned up, and before she knew it, it was already morning. She had to quickly go rest her head before the major day's work started. She barely put her head on the pillow before the cock crowed and her alarm went off, signaling another day of stress. She got up and began to make breakfast for her kids and husband so she could go to work early. She bathed her kids and got them ready for school, leaving her husband's food on the table for when he woke up. He was still job hunting and contributed little or nothing to the home, as the burden of taking care of the kids rested on Kefi's shoulders. She took the kids to school while her husband picked them up and brought them back home. She kissed her kids goodbye in front of their school and made her way to her workplace. She started with her daily activities at work, which was very stressful. Kefi loved her job so much, and you could tell, but lately her tiredness was beginning to affect her as she contributed little or nothing to the projects being handled. Most times, she would slip off during the meetings and was cautioned about it. But it got so bad that she received a query. She had a friend at her workplace named Bisola who had told her countless times to send her kids to her parents so she could have enough rest and time, or at least get a maid. But she told her that her husband was vehemently against it, insisting that his kids must live under the same roof with him and she could handle everything. After all, his mother was able to take care of the home and farm when they were little. She told her friend she would be fine. Bisola decided to help her friend handle some of her work while she napped and would give her a heads up if anyone came to her office, and she thanked her so much. Back home, her husband was still sleeping when Kefi called and asked if he had picked the kids up from school. He said he would do that now. She signed and cut the call. Kefi knew that this thing she called marriage wasn't working. She had countless times gotten a job for her husband, but once he figured out that it was lower than what she earned, he turned it down. She told him to start with it until he got something better, but he had vehemently refused to do so. Once in a while, her mother came around and helped her so she wouldn't break down and she would sleep like she hadn't slept in years. Kathy was becoming older than she was, and people were telling her she did not have time to do her hair or nails, and she couldn't remember the last time she did wonderful makeup on her face. Where was the money for that, anyways, as they were always on a tight budget? All these overwhelmed her. She hoped for a change. A lady who lived in a far-off town named Effie lived in a very beautiful big mansion. Her husband was a big-time politician known for his wealth and status. He hung out with his friends occasionally for big meetings in the company of their wives, and they were all in secret competition with themselves, ensuring their wives maintained a certain weight, dressed very elegantly, and always looked beautiful, like women kept in the museum just to be looked at. The ladies had to speak a certain way and ensure they found some secrets against each other that could be used against themselves. It was like being in a battlefield while saying cheers to your enemy, because everyone wanted to do better than the other. Efe was never used to this lifestyle. She was raised by an average family who knew how to enjoy life to the fullest, until Chief Egbe came to ask for her hand in marriage to be his second wife. She is the one he took to most places, as he kept his first wife, Lati, at home to raise his 4 kids, as her body had changed after childbirth. Efe would never have children, as he had her womb taken out, so she wouldn't ever be pregnant. Lati, the first wife, did not let Efe come close to her children, as that was her only source of joy, and she did not want to lose it. She told her kids to keep their distance from Efe. This was not the life she envisioned for herself. A life with everything you ever wanted, but never being called mom, and not knowing what motherhood feels like. She also missed going out freely and doing whatever she wanted. She could not see her old friends, as her husband forbade her from seeing them, saying they were below her class. This made her cry, because she had practically no one to talk to, as even her parents turned a blind eye to her plight, asking her if she wasn't eating properly and had enough to take care of her wants. But in truth, money wasn't her source of happiness, as she felt so lonely with no one to talk to, not even her husband, who was always going on one trip or the other. Efe wondered when she would take a break from this fake lifestyle and live life in abundance. She always wanted to work and do something meaningful with her life and have some form of backing, but all she was left with was just excess money, but no joy in spending it. If she wanted to go out for brunch, she must dress elegantly, not wanting to run into any of the wives, so they wouldn't have much to say to themselves. This particular day, she went for brunch, but opted to go somewhere more reserved, where she would likely not bump into any of the wives of the politicians, with her guards hiding in plain sight. She went up to buy food and saw a woman struggling to pay for her meal, as her card wasn't going through. She offered and paid her bill. The woman was so happy and thanked her so much. Efe saw the innocence in her eyes and introduced herself, saying she was Efe. The woman responded saying she was Kefi, and they sat down together to have a talk and laughed over a meal. Efe couldn't help but notice she was so sad and asked what the matter was. Kefi told her about how difficult it was to manage a home with a man who contributed nothing and still expected her to do everything. She asked why she hadn't gotten a maid, and Kefi said her husband was strongly against it. Besides, where was the money to pay who she would hire? Efe took a keen interest in what she said and told her she would assist her the way she could. Efe told her she was sure she had a lot on her plate. Efe said that was true, but couldn't tell her much for the fear of anyone hearing anything, as the walls had ears, but promised to explain everything much better later. She told Efe she kind of wished she was in her shoes. At least she had kids who looked up to her and loved her, and caring parents who wanted what was best for her. It was just unfortunate she was married to a man who was a weakling. Efe replied saying, I could say the same, having everything at my beck and call, not having to stress myself. She said she really needed that in her life right now. They both found a common ground and bonded, making arrangements to meet at the same place the next day. They went home so anxious and couldn't wait to meet each other, as they stayed up late, wishing upon a star, saying they wished they could switch places. After saying that, they went to bed to rest for the night. By morning, they got up from bed, and it felt very strange. Effie woke up in Kefi's bed with her face and body. Likewise, Kefi. They had both swapped lives. The shock on their faces was evident. Kefi, being in Effie's body, was shocked and confused, not knowing what to do. As Kefi's kids ran into the room saying, "Mommy, we need breakfast," she was so confused. Beside her was Kefi's husband, and she woke him up, asking him to help her with the kids. He yelled at her, asking if she was alright and that she shouldn't wake him up again. Since when did that one start? She said, "I don't remember how to take care of the kids and their school." He got up and looked at her puzzled. He replied again, saying if she didn't remember, that was her business, and turned to his side to continue sleeping. She got up and went through the fridge, trying to understand the home and where things were kept. She kept asking the little girl where most of the things were and managed to prepare them for school, which was a Herculean task. She wondered if this was what Kefi had to go through every morning. She asked her daughter if she knew how to get to school. By this time, Femi, Kefi's husband, was watching what was happening and asked if she had hit her head hard as she was acting strange. She didn't know what to say. He said the kids were very late for school and that he would go drop them off. He asked if she would be going to the office, and she said he didn't know her way or what was expected of her. This was too strange for him. He called her friend, Wisola, and briefed her on the situation. She told him she would apply for a 2-week leave of absence, hoping Kefi would get well and return to work. He also asked her mother to come take care of her daughter as she must have lost her mind or something, and she promised to come the following day. She needed to put her house in order before leaving for the city. Meanwhile, back at Efe's home, Kefi, who was in Efe's body, was very confused about what was going on around her. Her maidservant had come to wake her up, as she usually did, and set her bath water. She told her the table was being set and her husband would be down in a few minutes for breakfast. She wanted to skip it, but her maidservant said she never skipped breakfast and her husband would be mad if he didn't see her at the dining table and begged to take her leave. She went into the bathroom and saw how beautiful it was. She took a bath, got dressed in the simplest clothing she could find in a closet, as everything else was too glamorous, and went downstairs to join Efe's husband. He asked if she needed money for new clothes. As he asked what rubbish she had put on, he sent her 10 million naira and told her to change her wardrobe. He also told her to remember the event during the weekend and to ensure she looked her best. She was stunned and without words. He said it would be off and would see her in the evening, and she should look sexy for him. Then he left. She stared at the old man, well old enough to be her father, and how he talked down on her. She wondered what Effie had been enduring and thought about her kids, wondering if they were able to go to school, and about her work. She had to go to the restaurant where she met Effie, so all this could be cleared up. She put on something more casual and set off to go see her. She got to the restaurant very early and didn't meet Effie, so she decided to wait in the car. But as she was about to step out, she saw Effie walk in. Looking at her in her own body was just too strange. Effie told her that they should go discuss in the car, and they asked the driver to step out while they had a conversation. Effie said, "How come this happened to us? We need to find a solution fast. As much as I wish to be you, I don't want to complicate things in my marriage." Kefi said the same, that she also wished to be Effie. Is that why this is happening to us? They both stared at each other, wondering what they had done. They decided to visit the seer to find the solution to their problem. They left immediately as there was no time to waste to get desired results fast, as it seemed like they made a mistake. The driver got in and took them to a seer. When they got there, they met an old man who called them by their names. They were shocked because he didn't know them from anywhere, but they were reassured that they were in the right place. He asked them to sit down, and without asking, he told them they both wished on the wishing star, which had passed at the stroke of midnight. They both had to adjust to their new lives. until another wishing star came. They asked when, and he responded saying in 2 weeks. 2 weeks was too long, but he asked them to be grateful one was coming by soon and not in 6 months. They were bonded for a reason. They should learn from each other, and it would be over before they knew it. They gave the old man a huge sum, thanked him and left. Kefi and Effie exchanged digits so they could easily communicate and decide to meet at the restaurant each day to plan their next steps carefully. They were distraught, but knew they were brought together for a reason. Time had far gone, and they decided to meet up at the same place the next day for further conversations. Kefi asked Effie to give her kids kisses on her behalf as she missed them. Effie said she would, and they both left for their homes. Femi asked Effie who had returned where she had been. She said she had to clear her head as she felt she was losing it. He replied, "Hope this isn't a tactic to avoid your work and chores. You better get to it." She simply told him that if he wouldn't do anything in the house, she would also not lift a finger. "You should prepare something for us to eat, as I am very hungry." She gave him money and asked him to buy foodstuffs for the house and left for the room. He asked if she was mad, and she said no. If he didn't do what she asked, he would sleep in a police cell tonight. He called her bluff, saying she must be mental, while preparing to head off to drink with his buddies. Just as he was about to step out, he saw two policemen in uniforms who came to pick him up. He kept asking what the matter was and asking his wife to come to his aid, but she paid a deaf ear to all he had to say. The following day, Kefi's mom came over and tried talking to her, but she noticed her daughter wasn't sounding like herself and wasn't calling her the pet name she usually did. Kefi, still in Effie's body, asked her mother to take care of the kid as she wasn't feeling too okay. She obeyed her daughter and noticed she handed her a large sum to also employ someone to help her out. As she was seeking help, she listened, hoping for her daughter to return back to herself again. Effie and Kefi kept meeting up, and Kefi asked Effie how she would go about the occasion her husband talked about. She told her what to wear and called her stylist to come get her ready. She told her to just smile and not drop any comment on anything. She could say she had a sore throat and couldn't say much. She should just act elegantly and she would be fine. Kefi told Effie that she wanted to buy a house for Kefi so she could stay away from her useless husband so he wouldn't continue to be a leech. By the time he saw she was a changed person, he would sit up. Kefi thanked Effie for advice and begged her to release her husband. She said she would, but asked her to think about the house offer, and she wanted to open a restaurant but needed her to manage it as her husband could never know. She wasn't sure she wanted this lifestyle anymore, but she didn't want to be broke as he would get a lawyer to take everything from her. But if they were under Kefi's name, he wouldn't touch it. She loved the idea and planned to work towards it. They laughed at the recent happenings in their lives, and Effie admitted that she loved when her kids called her mom. She wished she had never taken out her womb. Kefi told her she could always adopt, that what happened had happened, but there was still a way, and she lit up at the lovely idea. She also told her they were more than sisters now, that her kids were also hers. They both hugged and bade themselves goodbye. Back at Effie's home, Chief noticed a little strange behavior about his wife and asked if everything was alright. She said yes, but still found ways of avoiding making love to the man as he repulsed her. She always came up with wonderful excuses to dismiss him. Either she was on her period or she was sick, just as long as it didn't go beyond a peck and a hug. But he was too busy to look into it. After all, 2 weeks would pass smoothly, or so she thought. Their plans were moving very swiftly. Femi had come back home after some days in the cell. He looked at his wife like a woman he did not recognize. How could she lock him up? He tried acting rude towards her, but she gave him a warning that if he didn't want to go back to the cell he just came out from, he should respect himself. He felt a cold shiver go down his spine. She gave him an ultimatum to get a job before the month's end or pack his things and leave the house. She couldn't take care of a man who was meant to cater for the home and the kids and still do all the chores. She asked him to take up the wifely duties for the meantime, and when he got a job, they would share the chores among themselves. He looked at Kefi, the woman who would worship the ground he walked on, talking to him in such a manner. If only he knew that the woman in front of him wasn't his wife, for he feared going against her in order not to sleep in that mosquito-infested cell. He woke up early, got dressed, made food for the kids, and took them to school. He came home, did laundry, cleaned the home. Before he could rest, the kids were back from school, and another cycle continued until it was nighttime. His body ached from the work he had to do, and he knew he had been a bad husband to his wife. He promised to do better. Effie, still in Kefi's body, dropped by at work, and they asked if she was getting any better. She told them yes, that once her leave was over, she would resume work, that she really needed a break as she felt she was beginning to lose her sanity, but she was becoming better. She bade them goodbye and went to meet up with Kefi at their usual spot. Kefi and Effie had already completed their plans and bought a new house for Kefi. It was so beautiful and she couldn't wait to move into the house. They were already scouting for the best place to open a restaurant when Kefi received a call from Chief, asking her to come home immediately. Kefi was a bit scared, but Effie told her not to worry, that in 3 days the star would be out and they would both wish on it and finalize their plan. She should not worry, but Effie felt a certain unease about the whole situation. They both bade themselves goodbye and left back to their temporal lives. When Kefi arrived at Effie's home, her husband stood in the living room, waiting for her to walk in. When she came inside the house, she met him with a brown-skinned huge man. He asked her where she was coming from, and she said she went to see a friend. He asked who bought the house on Allen Avenue, and she began to shiver as to how he discovered what she had been hiding so well. She said her friend. He then asked why the money came from her account. She started to shake her legs without words to say. He told her that whatever she was planning wouldn't work, and he decided to have her locked up in her room, her gadgets seized with no means of communication. She kept shouting and pleading, but her words fell on deaf ears. She looked at the door and saw no means of escape. His first wife, of course, wouldn't bother to look for her, nor raise an alarm if anything happened, as she wanted her out of the way. She thought about revealing everything, but couldn't keep her cards open. She banged at the door for what seemed like a very long time, but no one came to her rescue. After a day had gone by without food or water, she was very weak. She hoped that someone would remember her and come to her rescue. All Kefi could do was pray and pray as she waited. Chief came into the room and asked her if she was ready to tell him what the money was used for, but she insisted it wasn't hers, but the lady's. She kept her money for her for a long time, and she just happened to come back for it. He shouted, "Liar! The driver said you just met this woman 2 weeks ago, and you have been meeting consistently." She told Chief that they were finalizing how she would pay for her house, and that was all. He told her he would leave her all by herself and come back the next day, when she was ready to tell him what he wanted to hear. She begged him to give her food and water, but he slammed the door in her face. Kefi wondered what a heartless man Effie married, and if they both had not switched bodies, this is what Effie would be going through on her behalf. She hoped this nightmare would end before it took her, as she had just one more day before the star came out. Meanwhile, Effie was very worried about her friend Kefi, as this was the second day she hadn't come to see her, which was unlike her. He was beginning to think Chief must have a hand in her disappearance, and hoped that man hadn't done anything to hurt her. She quickly got out her phone and dialed her cook's number, which she had given her in case she couldn't reach her. She told her that Oga had locked her up and instructed that no food or water be given to her, and it had been 2 days. She was scared for her. Effie thanked the cook and hung up. She needed to come up with a quick plan to rescue her dear friend, or it would be catastrophic. Effie immediately made up her mind to leave Chief and move in with Kefi, as they could both live together and run their new business. She also had some cash hidden in her wardrobe. She had her plans intact and wrote a note of the instructions by her bedside table, so Kefi would read it when they swapped bodies and not mess up with the plans she had for tomorrow. She only hoped she had the strength to stay awake to wish on the star. At midnight, they both wished to be back in their bodies. Kefi used her last strength to stay awake and wished on the star and went to bed. By morning, Effie was in her body and Kefi in hers, hoping Kefi would read her message. Her body was very weak from not eating, but she managed to get up, packed the stashed cash into her handbag, hid it under her bed, and hoped for the best. Chief came in and asked if she was ready to talk. Being in her own body, she tried sweet-talking Chief, and even as she laid on the floor, saying, "Chief, I thought you said you loved me. Why would you make me suffer this way? I thought you said I make your heart beat so fast. What exactly has changed about that? My darling Chief, don't let me die. What will my parents say? This isn't what you promised them. I thought you said you loved me, Chief." Chief, not wanting to hear more, told her he would see her tomorrow if she could still stand it. He left and went downstairs, and not long after, newscasters were at his doorstep with his friends knocking and asking for Effie, his wife. He said she was fine, but they refused to leave until they confirmed that. Chief felt like the ground should open, as there was no hiding place. He was one who kept his reputation, so he signaled the cook to take food and water and have her dressed up. The cook opened the door with a food tray and water. She consumed it all, packed up her box, picked up her packed box with her handbag containing the money, and went downstairs. With the cook's help, he tried to hold her, but she shouted, "Murderer, you starved me for 3 days. No water even. I am leaving this house and it is over between us." The embarrassment was much on him, and she walked out of the door, got into her car, and drove off, leaving him to handle his mess. She met up with Kefi, hugged her, and apologized for the torture she went through in her house. "I was scared you wouldn't see my notes." Kefi said it was the first thing she saw when she woke up and had to act fast. Kefi said no need to apologize, that she was happy she was okay. She told her that she would be moving into their new house in a secured estate, that Chief wouldn't come close to her for now, as she would get a restraining order on him, and she was sure to get a good sum of money when they parted ways, because she was the one he got married to in court. She moved in and settled down. Kefi told Effie thank you for what she did with her husband, as he was so helpful in the house now. "Now I know the reason our paths crossed. I am forever grateful they did." They hugged again. Kefi said she would keep her job, and her husband just landed a big job. She was so happy that now she would push for a higher position. She advised Effie to focus on the catering business and also adopt a child when she wanted, as she knew she would make a great mother. They hugged again and promised to keep in touch as they journeyed through life together. Effie opened her big restaurant and took it seriously. It became the talk in town. Even the wives of the politicians came around to eat her food and just envied her for being her true self. This was after she was allocated a huge sum after their divorce, as this affected his campaign. No one wanted an inhumane politician, so they excluded him from their group. Effie adopted twin children, a boy and a girl, and she doted on them so much. She kept her distance from her parents, as she partially blamed them for the type of life she found herself in, and promised to be a better person. Meanwhile, Kefi and her family grew in love and peace. They hired help, making things easier. They enjoyed the bond of marriage and lived in peace. The end. Lessons to be learned from this story: do not marry for money or because of pressure from your parents. Only you know where the shoes hurt. Do not work yourself to death, as you can easily be replaced. Know your worth and don't let anyone make you feel less of yourself. Learn to live a toxic marriage. It's better to live a life than to stay and be buried. Know that what works for others might not work for you.
Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please click on the subscribe button to support us. Turn on the post notification to get notified when I upload a new story. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. Till then, Bye.